Okay, welcome back to 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse, and we're going back to wrestling because there was a couple episodes of The Dark Side of Wrestling Season 4, the last two episodes, which basically covered two wrestlers who were basically insane. I mean, completely, utterly insane. In the Magnum T.A. episode, Magnum talked about being screwed out of $10,000 for a quote wrestling license by Buzz Sawyer, and when it was time for Buzz to train him, Buzz had skipped town. Buzz had done this to somebody else, none other than The Undertaker back in the day, who was also supposed to train him. The interview with The Undertaker stated that basically he was in WCW as Mean Mark Callis. And Buzz was there, and Buzz was the darling of Booker Ole Anderson, who didn't grasp the fact that Buzz was completely coked out of his mind half the time. So basically, The Undertaker grabbed a chair, put it in front of Buzz, and goes, "Remember me?" And Buzz got all nervous and sweaty and shit like that. But like Mark says, he really couldn't do anything at that point because Buzz was the darling of Ole Anderson. Buzz became the national boogeyman for WCW for almost 2 years. It was like you had to get home at 6:05 and turn on TBS just to see how insane Buzz would get. And Buzz got completely insane. And like I said, it was tolerated by certain people. He did stuff like basically when Butch Reed was being interviewed, he walked up to Butch and said, "Shine my shoes." Said stuff about Dick Murdoch's mother, all kinds of crap. He also formed a tag team with the Russian Bear Ivan Koloff, and Ivan related a story about how they had stopped for beer after a match, and some people were in the convenience store ragging on Ivan about his Russian chain match and how wrestling was fake and all this other shit. Well, when they went outside, Buzz got involved, and Buzz basically started beating the shit out of the guy, running his face into the gravel in the parking lot until the police showed up and actually pulled guns on Buzz to get him off. There's tons of other stories floating around. Matt Bourne, who was the original Doink the Clown and is no stranger to violence himself, related a story about how he was traveling with Buzz and Pedro Morales at one point, and he was using a radar detector. And Buzz started getting weird about the whole thing. "Why are you hiding the thing? Why don't you put it on your dash?" And they were going back and forth, and finally it got heated, and Matt pulled over, and Buzz got out, and Matt went to get out of the car when Pedro Morales hit the buttons to lock the car and looked at him and shook his head, and he goes, "You don't want to do that." So basically that's how fucking nuts Buzz was. And of course Buzz was aided by cocaine. And what people don't remember is, and wouldn't really know is unless you watched a lot of shoot interviews like I did, is that Matt Bourne told the story that he was basically brought into the Mid-Atlantic area by Roddy Piper, who he knew from Portland, Oregon, because his father, Tony Bourne, was working up there, and that's where basically Matt had started. He said that him and Roddy walked into the office of Wahoo McDaniel, and as a signing bonus, Wahoo threw an 8-ball on the desk. This was an older wrestler who basically was prominent in the 60s and the 70s, and for whatever reason, he embraced the whole cocaine thing, and it's not a big mystery because if you watch that documentary, 360 Days, Greg Valentine relates a story about how he got in the ring with Wahoo, and basically the coke was just pouring out of his nose, and basically Greg knew that he was in a real fucking jackpot with this thing where he might be badly injured by working with this guy, so he basically had to knock Wahoo out, unconscious. But going back to Buzz screwed over a lot of people with this wrestling school and stuff like that, and like I said, Ole brought him back a couple times, and then in the interview, Ole said, "I didn't know that half my fucking roster was on cocaine." Buzz died very young. He was found on the lawn outside his house. I think it was in Sacramento, California, where he died of a massive cocaine overdose. In the ring, Buzz was a consummate performer, a crazy man, and, drew a lot of interest. And like I said, he was must-see TV back in the day. But as a human being, as Jim Cornette stated, Buzz was a scumbag. Buzz would fuck people over. Buzz would basically take advantage of the job guys and beat on them and stuff like that. Buzz would rip off younger guys by walking in and borrowing their boots or their trunks or something like that and refusing to give them back. And Buzz did have a short run in the WWF at the time. He was brought in at the same time they had Mad Dog Vachon there, so he couldn't use the Mad Dog name. They called him Bulldog Buzz Sawyer. He was put with Lou Albano, and I don't think he lasted more than a month because, according to another interview I had heard by his brother, Brett Sawyer, that him and Vince McMahon clashed maybe physically, and Buzz was in and out of there in a month. So that was Buzz's whole tenure in the WWF at that point. Like I said, you know, Buzz bounced around on the indie circuit, came back to WCW one more time under the tutelage of management of Gary Hart with the great Muda and Terry Funk, I believe, or something like that. And you saw Buzz in a cage match where Buzz basically walked over and found a broken part of the cage and ran his forehead into it a few times to draw some blood, and also took this horrendous bump off the cage on his head. So Buzz was working fucked up, which was dangerous to a lot of other wrestlers. So if you want to go with a wrestler that was literally insane, it was Buzz Sawyer, no doubt about it. And we will continue this with a look at another wrestler who was basically insane, Dr. Jerry Graham. So this is to be continued.